Welcome to Conservation Matters. I'm your host, Cassie Tolf, and I'm the Technical Assistant for the Natural Resource Conservation Service at the Midland Conservation District. Conservation districts are a local unit of government that were first established during the Dust Bowl era. We work with farmers, ranchers, and foresters to help prevent soil erosion. Back then, we now work with all landowners to help soil, water, and air quality and quantity. The Midland Conservation District is co-located with the Natural Resources Conservation Services at the USDA Service Center at 954 East Isabella Road in Midland, Michigan. That's right off of M20. Together we work to identify the needs of our local community, work with other conservation partners, and help to develop the best management plans to help solve our natural resource problems. NRCS provides technical assistance, conservation planning, and cost share programs to help landowners implement conservation practices to help protect and improve our natural resources and help individuals manage their private lands for a cleaner and healthier Michigan. Joining us today from the USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service is Tim Redder. Tim is the RCPP Program Coordinator of Michigan, and he is located at the state office in Lansing. Thanks for joining us today, Tim. You mind telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Thanks, Cassidy. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here today and talk to you about the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is a branch of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And as you mentioned, we as well formed back in the Dust Bowl area in the 1930s. Out of a need for addressing soil erosion concerns that were happening on private lands specifically. And then out of that came the formation of the conservation districts, who are partners with us in our mission to get conservation out on private lands to protect our valuable resources, not only soil, but our water, air, plants, and animal resources as well. So, yeah, as you mentioned, I am a program coordinator for Michigan, specifically NRCS, and the program that I work under, one of several, is the RCPP, which stands for Regional Conservation Partnership Program. It's a national program, basically that covers all the states in the U.S., so everybody in the U.S. has the opportunity to participate or apply for the funding for the program. But to give you a little bit of background, I guess, about myself before we get too much into the program, specific parts of it, I've been with NRCS now just about 18 years. Started at the field offices, so our agency, has county-level field offices that are co-located with the conservation districts, so our partners, the districts. I think most of the counties in the Lower Peninsula have field offices. The Upper Peninsula shares multiple counties. But in those field offices, we have staff, as well as district staff, that their purpose is to assist private landowners and go out and evaluate their properties, see what resource concerns they have, and then develop plans to help them improve the resources on their property if there are needs. And then also, the big part of our agency now is implementing federal conservation programs, and those programs were authorized through the federal farm bill. So there's several different programs that may be applicable to landowners' property that field staff can work with them on and show them what's available and what opportunities might be available to assist them in doing some of the work on their property, and not only technically but also financially as well. So that's a little bit about me with the agency. My background, kind of grew up on a farm, so have some ag background. Family had about a 250-acre cash crop farm, so I spent a lot of time raising cash crops as a kid, working on the farm, baling hay, doing sweet corn, different things. Also love being in the outdoors, so enjoy a lot of hunting, that type of thing. And so working for NRCS, that's kind of both of them in one. So we work a lot with ag landowners, but we also work a lot doing wildlife habitat work as well on private lands, not just agricultural lands, but all lands in general, and specifically private lands. So that's a little bit about myself. I guess, do we want to get into more specifically about the RCPP project?
Yeah, so today we're going to be looking at RCPP programs and funded projects here in Michigan. We're also going to look at the current Upper Tittabawassee River project here in our area and how the RCPP program is assisting with that installation of conservation practices on the ground after the dam breaches and the flooding. So, Tim, can you tell us, I know you told us a little bit about what RCPP is. Can you tell us about how it relates to projects in general? How does RCPP get involved?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I mean, the slide that was being shown there, the dam breaches, especially in this area, NRCS was involved through a couple of programs. We have an emergency watershed protection program that has been out working in those areas, specifically working with landowners to do restoration work for erosion and also repairs to stream and road crossings. But the RCPP program, Regional Conservation Partnership Program, we like to use a lot of acronyms in federal government, so I apologize. I'll try to pronounce them before I throw them all out there. But that's, like I mentioned, a national program. It was developed back in the 2014 Farm Bill by Senator Debbie Stabenow. It was kind of her program that she developed through the 2014 Farm Bill. And the intent of that program was to basically provide financial resources for local partners for projects to get more resources out on the land through these local partners. So as you can see in 2022, nationally, the agency NRCS awarded close to $200 million worth of funding in RCPP for 41 projects nationwide. So it's a very good program for local projects, not only countywide, but we can go county, we can do multi-county, we can do statewide. As you'll see in a little bit when we talk about some more of the specific state projects we have going, we also have multi-state projects through RCPP that we're working on as well. But some of the things that the program looks to focus in on are, what's the impact the project will have on the landscape, not only to the resources, but to the local community, the local partners as a whole. Partner contributions. So a big thing with RCPP is when you request funding through the program, basically through a proposal that the partners will put together at a certain time when we announce there's funding opportunities available nationally, the partners will put and develop a proposal. And in that proposal, they'll ask for a set amount of funding. We require through the RCPP program that for every dollar of federal RCPP funds that come to the project, the partners also provide a matching contribution of $1, whether that's financial contribution or in-kind assistance or something that they've put towards the project. So we're looking for that one-to-one minimum contribution. So we're leveraging federal dollars and local dollars together to hopefully increase the amount of resources funding-wise that's available. We also look at innovation, right? So what types of projects do the partners want to do? Are they innovative? Is it going to be something new that will help landowners in that specific region or area of the project? And then the big thing about the program, partnerships. So growing, increasing partnerships throughout the project, making those connections so you can continue that work long term, because RCPP projects, the funding is a 5-year maximum. So the funding comes in, the project's valid and can continue for 5 years until the funding is done and the project's over, but we want to see those things continue, hopefully once the project is finished. And RCPP has a lot of different activities that you can offer through the program. So land management specific practices are a big thing in some of the projects, and ones we'll touch on here specifically for Upper Tittabawassee project in a little bit. Land rental, we don't do that much in Michigan, but it's basically incentive type payments for doing certain things on the ground. Entity held easements, so those are conservation easements that are held by a private entity that we assist with providing funding for land preservation specific efforts. United States House held easements, and those are easements that the actual government coordinates and holds and works with folks on. And then the last one there is the public works and watershed projects. So watershed size or scale projects. And an example of that is we've got a couple of those where we're working with dam removal or replacements of dams and increasing habitats in streams in certain watersheds as well. So that's a little bit about the project itself. If you'll see, I think on the next slide there's a website to go to. www.nrcs.usda.gov. It's a good resource. If you go there, the Programs and Initiatives tab, click on that, and there'll list a lot of the different NRCS-specific programs, but also the RCPP-specific program. And it's a good resource if you want some more just basic information. If you're a partner or even just someone in the general public out there that wants to know more about the program, that's a good spot to go to. You click on that, and then basically within that there's certain resources you can look at. So Michigan, when you look at RCPP, we're actually located in what's called a critical conservation area in the Great Lakes. So the Great Lakes itself is designated through RCPP as a critical conservation area. And what that means is Michigan projects in the Great Lakes area are given priority for being in this conservation area if they're addressing water quality resource concerns and wildlife habitat resource concerns through the implementation of their project. So when they put in a proposal, if those are a couple of the resource concerns that are going to be addressed through the project, it'll fall under that critical conservation area priority concern for the Great Lakes as well. As I mentioned, RCPP is nationwide. Another good resource if you go to that website is there's an interactive GIS map there with these different pins on it across the U.S. If you want to look at other projects that are going on around the nation that RCPP is providing funding for, just to kind of get an idea of the overall scale of different projects across the nation, that's a good one to go to, and click on those pins. It'll bring up specific information on the project, the funding that was allocated, who the partners are that are involved, and give you a good idea geographically where they are. But you can see it's scattered throughout the U.S. across, most states have some RCPP projects going on within them as well.
So you mentioned that we have some current RCPP projects going on right now. I know that map kind of shows us a little bit of places that have them going on, but do you mind giving like a little bit of an overview or some of the bigger projects going on in Michigan specifically, and how have those benefited some of the surrounding communities?
Yeah, so that map there, it's kind of busy, but the overall, so Michigan right now we have currently 10 active RCPP projects going on, and they cover a majority of the state. So the entire Upper Peninsula, the entire northern lower Saginaw Bay, southeastern part, western Lake Erie Basin, and then kind of the southwest, south central part of the lower peninsula as well. So those 10 different projects reach across the state, in most of the state. There's a few areas that aren't quite covered, but yeah, so we've got a lot of different projects going on, and we can touch on a few of those. So the first one is a new one that's just getting started. It's funded through our lead partner, the Michigan Department of Ag and Rural Development, that otherwise called MDARD is what they go by. So MDARD basically just received funding recently to do climate smart and reforestation work, basically planting trees, increasing forestation in the northern lower peninsula specifically. So if you look at basically a line from Mason County, Osceola, Lake, Clare, all the way over to Gladwin, and then north to the bridge, Mackinac Bridge, those counties now are going to be in this specific MDARD reforestation project area. And a lot of the counties in that area have foresters funded through MDARD, and they're going to be using those foresters specifically to connect with private landowners in any of those counties that are interested in doing tree plantings. So reach out to the local conservation district, connect with that forester if you're interested, and they'll work directly with a landowner and a private contractor to basically develop a plan and then work with them doing the site prep and then ultimately the planting of the trees and the follow-up and maintenance after the planting to ensure there's growth. So that's one of our new projects, just getting started on the ground. Another one here in the Saginaw Bay area, not quite kicked off yet, but we're still in the negotiation phase, so it's getting close, is with the Nature Conservancy. And that one specifically is going to look to work with sugar beet producers in the Saginaw Bay watershed and try to implement strip tilling for sugar beets to improve soil quality on the sugar beet operations, then also increase the use of cover crops and sugar beet cropping rotations. So the Nature Conservancy is working with us on that, and that'll be, like I said, in the Saginaw Bay watershed specifically. The next one is a little bit different. That's through the City of Ann Arbor. Their Ann Arbor Greenbelt specifically project. It's a easement specific, entity held easement specific project. And there's the City of Ann Arbor and then 5 other partners, several land conservancies and a few of the townships in Washtenaw County. And the goal of that project is to do land preservation through easements. So RCPP is providing funding assistance to these entities to work with landowners to place conservation easements on their property to preserve not only ag land as one, but also just open lands as well, because of the increased development pressure that Washtenaw Ann Arbor area has seen over the years. The local folks there actually have provided some significant matching dollars because that's a priority for the residents in that area, is to preserve land, not have it all developed for ag production, but also places to go and have some natural lands. So that's one that's just getting started as well. Ottawa is one that is going now. It's in its second year. It's located over in, if you're not familiar, Ottawa County is over on the west side of the state. Holland, Michigan is in Ottawa County, so it's right along Lake Michigan there. Ottawa County actually is the fastest developing county, according to the last census, excuse me. So they're expanding very well, seeing a lot of development pressure. But they're also one of the most diverse ag counties in Michigan, so there's a lot of ag still going on there. And they reached out to get funding for this project because they were seeing issues not only in surface water quality from the development pressure, but also from groundwater. So all the development is putting a lot of pressure on their groundwater recharge, and they've actually got some residential wells that are drying up because the aquifer is not recharging due to the extensive use. So that project through RCPP is looking to implement practices on the land that will improve water quality, but then also improve water infiltration efforts to help recharge some of those aquifers as well. And then they also have a component for easements. So again, ag preservation is a big thing in that county. They don't want to develop the whole county, so they're starting out an ag preservation program and have some funding to assist with getting that off the ground going, preserving some farmland specifically in that county. Another multi-state project that we've been working on, and it's actually through its second RCPP round of funding. So it had a successful first round under the first 5 years, and then they went back and got a second 5-year RCPP fund agreement. So that's a tri-states project specifically focused on the Western Lake Erie Basin. If you're not familiar with Western Lake Erie, one of the big issues is algae blooms in the summer. And that's from increased sediment and phosphorus loads coming in from the watershed area that drains into the western Lake Erie, which is significantly agricultural. So this is a tri-state project, so we're partnered with the Ag Department here in Michigan, the Ag Department in Ohio, and the Ag Department in Indiana, focusing in on doing private land ag practices that work on reducing sediment and phosphorus loads as well in that specific project.
That is all great information. And now a lot of people over here are familiar with the dams breaching. And would you like to tell them about how RCPP is interested in helping the people of the upper Tittabawassee?
Yeah, well, in case you didn't know, you actually have an RCPP project. It was first awarded funding in 2021. It's called the Upper Tittabawassee is what it's called. So anyone who's not familiar with a watershed, basically the Upper Tittabawassee watershed is all the land that drains into the Upper Tittabawassee, and then within that there are sub-watersheds that drain to it as well. But this project came in and was originally proposed by Gladwin County specifically due to some issues in the Upper Tittabawassee from soil erosion and sedimentation of some of their drains. That was also increasing flooding in those areas due to that sediment being deposited in those drainage channels. And then also from the historic flooding events and rain that we saw that caused some pretty catastrophic erosion in some of those water bodies themselves. So this project's a 5-year project. As you can see on the slide there, the green area, the green shaded area is the Upper Tittabawassee project area that's getting the RCPP specific funding. So if you're in that green area, you may be eligible to participate or provide, and we can provide some assistance as we'll talk about here a little later. But this project's kind of phased, so there's multi-phases. There's some specific work that we're doing on the water bodies themselves to try and restore them back to their natural condition, natural flow, to reduce some of that flooding and sedimentation that's going on in those water courses. And the first one is the Cedar River Watershed Project. I believe that's the first phase or project of it. And that one's going to focus specifically on working on BMP's best management practices for landowners in the Cedar River watershed area, increasing work on conservation work on private lands to help reduce some of that sediment loading specifically in the Cedar River watershed. The next couple of phases, they're called the Davidson and the Burleson drain. Those two projects actually are doing stream channel drainage work where they're going to come in and they're going to do some bank stabilization, they're going to do some sediment removal, they're going to do some stream crossing work to try and stabilize some active erosion that's going on in certain stretches of those two water courses and get them back to a natural flowing functioning channel as well. Ross Lake is another phase. And that one specifically is going to focus in on some of the sedimentation that's occurred in Ross Lake that's impacted the lake specifically and some of the water quality in the lake. And then work on educating, again, landowners about how they can implement practices to help reduce future pollution, sedimentation, and water quality within that Ross Lake drainage area specifically. The Curtis Inter-County Drain is another project in the Upper Tittabawassee as part of this RCPP. And that one as well, they're going to look at doing some improvements to the Curtis Inter-County, which hasn't been maintained or had much of anything done to it in quite a long time. So they're seeing a lot of flooding issues and impacts in ag-specific areas. So they're going to go in and do some work there to increase drainage capacity, do some natural stabilization of areas and allow it again to function and drain some of those ag lands so they're productive. And then the last one is what they're calling Nestor Creek as well. And that one, again, is maintenance of drainage course, water body, improvements of upland practices to help reduce that sedimentation and improve the water quality coming off of any of the fields that drain into that specific water course.
All right. So you mentioned that some people in that area, they could be eligible for implementing practices. When you say practices, what are some of the practices that if they were eligible, that they could possibly be implementing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we talked about, a lot of the in-channel drain work, stream work that they're going to be doing specifically through the county drain offices, but there is another phase of RCPP for this project that provides another set of funds, and this is specific to private landowners, right? So not only agricultural, but any private landowners. There's practices that they want to implement or are looking to implement, like planting habitat or permanent cover on fields for wildlife, or planting filter strips along water courses to reduce runoff coming in, or even soil health. So like, NRCS, a big thing with us right now is doing practices that don't disturb the soil. Mm-hmm. So no-tilling, right? No-tilling of crops, planting of cover crops, basically not disturbing that soil so you allow it to heal, rebuild, and allow more infiltration of rainwater so the soils function more naturally, and you have a better medium to grow crops in as well, reducing runoff and everything else that comes off the field. So there's a suite of practices that are available through this project for private landowners. And one of the big things we're kind of, I think, here today to talk about a little bit is that opportunity specifically for any of these landowners who are watching that are in that specific green area that we showed earlier. I think we're going to show again. But there's going to be a sign-up starting here right at the end of January 30th, abouts, that anybody who's interested or wants to know more or find out more or even find out if their property may even qualify can contact the local Midland Conservation District or NRCS office, or the Gladwin Conservation District or Gladwin NRCS office, and go in and submit an application. And basically what the program will do is, if they're eligible and they qualify, NRCS will work with them to create a conservation plan and provide practice-specific requirements that when they help install and it's completed, NRCS will provide some financial funding to do that work. Basically, it's a startup, so they're not doing the work all out of pocket. There's reimbursement to help assist getting that conservation on the ground, specifically in the upper Tittabawassee area. So that's a good thing. There's dedicated funding for it, and it's only for the upper Tittabawassee area. So it's a good advantage for folks to take, having that nice set of funds right there dedicated for them in that project area.
That is great. And you did mention, so it's private landowners. So I just had a piece of property in there, then there's potential that I could be eligible if I was in that area.
Yep.
Because I'm a private landowner.
Exactly. Like we talked about earlier, the goal of NRCS and the districts is specifically to work with those private landowners, mm-hmm. because a lot of the ground is owned privately. And that's where we want to get the resources out to those folks, those private landowners, and make it available to them to do improvements on their property if they're looking to do so, or even provide just the technical information to them on how to do certain things, whether it be how do I plant a cover crop, or mm-hmm. what do I need to think about if I want to start no-till, or if I want to increase deer or pheasant habitat on my property, what do I need to do? So there's a lot of that we can provide, not only financially but just the technical resource as well to those landowners if they're interested.
I think a big question that a lot of people will have, or that I'm asked often, is, well, how much does it cost me to ask these questions? How much does it cost me to have someone come out to my property and see if I am even eligible? And the best answer to that is, it's just our time. It's free. It's a free thing to see if you're eligible. It's free to work alongside us, and The other thing that I like about a lot of our projects is it's not us. People have a misconception that it's us going out there and saying, this is what you have to do and this is how you're going to do it. And that's not at all what we're about. It's we're explaining these are things that you should do and why you could do them, but at the end of the day, it comes down to what does that private landowner want to do, and we help make that plan that best fits their needs and what they'd like to see.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. You mentioned it's a service that's provided to anyone who's interested. Just got to call or email or reach out to the district, and someone will come out and do a walk of the property, talk to them, find out what their issues are or their goals are or their concerns. And, you know, looking back, growing up on a farm as a kid, I knew nothing about USDA. I knew nothing about NRCS or the districts back then. But, man, if I would have, I could have connected my relatives. And there's a lot of improvements looking back that, man, we could have done if I'd just known about the agency and the resources that it provides that are free of charge. So, yeah, definitely a good point.
Oh, yeah. And as he said, if you want more information, just come visit us at the Midland Conservation District or the Gladwin, whichever one's closer to you, more convenient. You can go right to the office, or you can email, call. Just check out our website for all that information, as well as some of these slides have been including that information too. And then I want to thank Tim for joining us today and sharing this information and explaining the ins and outs of RCPP, because it can get a little complicated, and some of the different projects we have going on in the area and how those have benefited.
Thank you. Yeah, it was my pleasure. Like I said, take advantage of it because you guys have a nice project going on here in the Gladwin and Midland County areas, so you might as well take advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah,